Alright, so in this video, I'm going to be going over a summary here for the 2024 college football season. What do you need to expect in terms of all of the realignment chaos that is happening in 2024, all the different teams moving conferences, and then in another video, I think I'm going to do my predictions on the 2024 summer because we've seen the crazy realignment moves always seemingly happen in the summer of every offseason. We might get some big FSU and maybe ACC news this offseason, depending, but I'm just going to kind of give a quick summary on everything that's going on. College football expansion, every realignment move that is coming in 2024. Before we even talk about that, we do have Kennesaw State joining FBS in 2024. They will join Conference USA. That's happening in July. And you do have one formerly independent school, Army, joining the American. Now, unfortunately, the American, by fault of being poached, after the Big 12 lost teams, they needed new ones. They had to take teams from the American, so the American has to take teams from other conferences to try and bolster their league, but at this point, the American is extremely watered down. That comes from other dominoes happening, kind of like college football coaching situations, with Alabama losing their head coach, they take Washington's head coach, and then Washington takes Arizona's head coach. It's kind of the same thing with conferences, but taking a look conference by conference, the ACC, you do have Cal, Stanford, and SMU coming in, and that came out very late last year, almost like when it was about to be week 0, it was announced. The ACC felt threatened. There's the questions about what's going to happen to FSU, maybe other teams in that conference with that terrible TV deal. They're locked in through 2036. We've already had rumors that FSU trying to get out of it. FSU goes undefeated. They don't make the playoff. They're saying the ACC is so weak, it's irrelevant. We need to leave. And you also do have the situation where FSU, along with a few other teams, voted against Cal, Stanford, and SMU joining. That, in my opinion, was more so a leverage move so they could say when they try and argue their case to get out that, we didn't want these new teams coming into the league to possibly dilute the revenue that we're supposed to be getting because they're all splitting revenue in that league. If you bring more teams in, you're going to be getting less because you have to share with more universities, and Cal, Stanford, and SMU coming in. Who's leaving? Well, that's a loaded question for the ACC. Nobody, but keep an eye on Florida State. It's not even just Florida State. It's also other teams like Clemson, also maybe North Carolina, NC State possibly looking to get out of that league as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the ACC, but right now, it is going to be a very strange league makeup going into next year. By the way, FSU is really apparently going to be a lot worse next year. I thought they would still be like a preseason top 12 team. I've been looking at some preseason polls. They're ranked like 20th. And I understand they're losing a ton, but you would think they'd be able to replace in the portal, and the ACC's weak. I don't know. Maybe Clemson could be a dark horse to keep your eye on. Cade Klubnik, he's older, maybe a little bit better. I don't know. We'll see. But it'll certainly be weird when you have, the matchups. What was the one matchup? Stanford at Syracuse on a Friday night. Oh my goodness. It's just hilarious. I want to see Stanford play, in the snow. That would be really funny. Same thing with Cal, but SMU, it's kind of sad what happened to SMU. They would have, if they were still in a group of 5, they would be one of the favorites to possibly get that auto bid into the playoff. Their quarterback had a horrible injury towards the end of the season, and they've kind of fallen to being irrelevant again. We'll see if Preston Stone can be back next year, but we're watching the ACC for sure. Moving on to the Big 12, you do have Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado coming into the conference from the Pac-12, and they are losing the two big dogs, Texas and Oklahoma. So what does this create? Losing your two blue blood teams, getting, Arizona, kind of a weird situation. What an amazing year they had last year, but then they lose their head coach. However, they were able to keep Noah Fafita, the star freshman quarterback. They've got a few good receivers as well. Arizona State, they haven't been very good recently. Utah, that's the team that everyone is watching joining this league, possibly with Cam Rising back. They've always got a good defense, that pedigree with Kyle Whittingham. They might be the favorite to win the Big 12 and get that auto bid into the 12-team playoff. And then Colorado, kind of a strange situation. I would expect around a 6-6, maybe a 7-5 season from Deion Sanders there. Texas and Oklahoma gone. It's going to create a lot of parity in this conference. It's going to be a complete mosh pit. What will the Big 12 look like? You've got, I mean, look at this conference, man. BYU, they've been a member for 1 year. Houston, they've been a member for 1 year. Cincinnati, they've been a member for 1 year. UCF, they've been a member for 1 year. And then you're adding 4 new teams. This is just a complete mess of a conference, man. It really is. And then the mainstays, Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, right there, Baylor, Iowa State, West Virginia, and then the 4 new teams from the Pac-12. So the Big 12, there's going to be a lot more parity. Losing your 2 best big dogs in terms of recruiting, in terms of roster talent, Texas and Oklahoma are gone, and you're adding a Utah team that's going to be really good. Arizona is a very dangerous team on offense. Arizona State, I'd expect to probably go 4-8. And then Colorado, again, you're looking at like a 6-6 type team. The Big Ten, it is very simple. It is USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. 4 really good teams. UCLA, you could kind of say, maybe just average, but they play in the Rose Bowl. They decided to retain Chip Kelly, kind of a weird situation there. Oregon's the big dog that's coming in. Let's just call it what it is. When you're looking at the potential winner of the Big Ten Conference, there are no more divisions. We will not be dealing with that terrible Big Ten West, somebody guaranteed to make the Big Ten Championship. There is a popular answer in terms of the potential Big Ten Championship game. It is Ohio State versus Oregon. Now, those teams will play in the regular season in Eugene. That's happening in early October. But yeah, Oregon coming in with Dylan Gabriel, also getting Dante Moore to back him up. They're going all in on the portal. Dan Lanning, Alabama maybe wanted him. He stays at Oregon. They're throwing around a ton of Nike money there, and they're coming in hot. Washington, I think, is going to take a major step back. We'll see how they do. They're probably a 6-6, 7-5 team this year. They're losing a ton. USC is going to be a dangerous team with Miller Moss. I think maybe a 9-3 type season, maybe 8-4. It's a tough conference. And then UCLA, you would expect like a 5-7 type year, maybe a 6-6 from them. But the Big Ten is going to be extremely tough. You're going to have Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and you're adding on Oregon and USC as kind of the big dogs in that league. Moving on to the American, or actually, I'm not even going to talk about the Pac. The Pac-12 doesn't exist anymore. I guess technically you could say, Washington State and Oregon State, but they have a scheduling agreement with the Mountain West. So I just wanted to show Oregon State's schedule here, just for context. You can see the non-conference games: Idaho State, Oregon. Technically, they're continuing the rivalry, the Civil War, Oregon State, Oregon, but that is a non-conference game, and it is happening week 3. You also do have Purdue as a non-conference game, and then California, that is a non-conference game for Oregon State next year. They are facing Washington State, of course. A lot of people thought they were going to do a home-and-home with Washington State just because they're a 2-team conference, but what's happening is you can see they're like an extension member of the Mountain West. They are ineligible to compete in the Mountain West Championship. So is Washington State. Neither of those 2 teams can, but they're facing Boise State, Air Force, Nevada, Colorado State, San Jose State, UNLV, San Diego State. I think that was already scheduled as a non-conference game, but that's kind of their scheduling agreement. There's really nothing left of the Pac-12 other than those 2 teams. Moving on to the American, they're adding a bunch of crap, unfortunately. Charlotte, that was the team I want to do my NCAA 2024 franchise dynasty with Charlotte, the most random team. Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Rice, UAB, UTSA, and Army. They're joining, and they're losing Houston, UCF, Cincinnati, and SMU. I don't know why they're saying they're losing. UCF and Cincinnati have been gone, and Houston's been gone as well. So they're really only losing next year, just SMU. But yeah, it's unfortunate what's happened to the American. It's just, this is what happens though when other conferences get rated. The conferences that get rated, like the Big 12, they need to replenish their conference, and they take teams from smaller leagues. The American was very good about 3 years ago, but now the situation is a lot more dire for that conference. Moving on to the SEC, they're getting 2 big boys, Texas and Oklahoma, joining that league. It's going to be very tough. The SEC was already really good as is. Now it's going to be great. I guess you could say maybe Alabama, with Nick Saban retiring, falling back to the pack a little bit. But Texas and Oklahoma, when they face some of those SEC teams, it's going to make for amazing matchups. And Texas joining the league possibly as an AP preseason, I would say they're going to be ranked number 3 or number 4. The way I look at the preseason AP poll right now, I think it's pretty much guaranteed they will put Georgia at number 1. Ohio State will be 2. And then probably Texas 3. You also have to look at a team like Oregon. I'm guessing they decide to move Alabama down a little bit. But Texas is going to be a very highly ranked team with Quinn Ewers returning, and they got some very impressive plug-and-play players from the portal. Oklahoma's another team I'm going to be watching. They kind of had a weird situation with Dylan Gabriel leaving, but they do have a 5-star quarterback, Jackson Arnold, who will be starting, and a lot of talent Oklahoma always has. Going to be tough for them, though. I mean, joining the SEC, you might lose 4 games, It's a very hard schedule, so we will see. But, guys, that is the big stuff in terms of realignment, all the teams moving. Leagues, it's going to be very different for this upcoming season, and I think it's for the better. People say, well, this isn't football. Yeah, some of it is ridiculous. I mean, it's all based on money. Like Stanford playing, some of these teams from the East Coast. It's ridiculous. Like, what's the point of conferences? It's not a conference, right? We're talking about, if you're talking about the United States of America, a team from California traveling to North Carolina, it's just not a conference. It completely defeats the purpose of a conference. A conference is to play teams near you geographically. So it is kind of funny, but I think this is all going to change in the end when we go to a completely different structure. And that's going to go along with kind of the pay being worked out and the NIL situation being worked out and the student athletes becoming employees of the university. That's coming probably by 2030. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.